Good evening. Good evening and welcome to this, the February 25th meeting of the Livermore City Council. I call the meeting to order. Let the roll show that all of the members of the council are present and accounted for. I ask that you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and just to confirm with the city attorney, there was no reportable action taken in the closed session?
That is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Moving on to presentations, we have a Poet Laureate update from our Poet Laureate, Cynthia Patton.
Good evening, Mayor Marchand, City Council members and staff. I'm Cynthia Patton. I'm your 4th Poet Laureate, and I'm here tonight to give you my annual report. Does anyone want a copy? Yes? Okay. Okay. In the past 20 months since I was installed as Livermore's 4th Poet Laureate, I have written 12 poems for civic events and public art installations, hosted 27 open mics at Swirl, Ravenswood, the library, the Alameda County Fair, and even Carnegie Park, coordinated and hosted 5 poetry at Ravenswood events with some phenomenal poets, curated and performed 2 cowboy poetry events at Hageman Ranch with the help of one spectacular volunteer, Nathan McKenna, served as poetry judge at the Alameda County Fair, hosted Poetry Day at the fair, which included an open mic and free poetry workshop, held 2 poetry in a test tube science poetry contests, will host a poetry corner at the Livermore School District's Science Odyssey Expo later this week. That's on Thursday night from 5 to 7 at Junction. If you're there, come by and say hi. Coordinated 10 Teen Poet of the Month contests, 12 by the end of this school year. Held an award ceremony and reading for both poetry in a test tube, the Science Poetry Contest, and the Teen Poet of the Month program, with 2 similar events planned for this spring. Gave 3 readings at the Livermore Civic Center Library, including an autism awareness event last April. Attended 4 literary events at the invitation of the library staff. Prepared and distributed a monthly literary arts newsletter, traveled to Southern California to attend the historic Gathering of Poets Laureate of California in October 2018, and represented Livermore at literary events throughout the Bay Area. Upcoming events include the Science Poetry Contest, which is ongoing. Hopefully you'll be seeing some of these flyers around town. The deadline is Friday, March 8th. An award ceremony and reading for the Science Poetry Contest, scheduled for Sunday, March 17th at 2 p.m. at the Civic Center Library. Mayor Marchand and I will host. A poetry workshop at the library is in the works in April. Poetry at Ravenswood will continue quarterly in April, July, and October on the 2nd Sunday of those months. More Teen Poet of the Month contests in April and May, and of course next school year as well. There's a bus mural dedication in May. This year's theme is Candyland, so I have my work cut out for me there. Teen Poet Awards in June. East meets West at the library, and more cowboy poetry at Hageman Ranch also in June. There's an open mic every month on the 4th Wednesday at Swirl on the Square, and hopefully another workshop at the fair this summer. And if that's not enough, I'm applying for at least 1 grant to help launch some new and exciting projects. Probably most importantly, Poetry Out Loud, which is a statewide spoken word competition for teens that teens in the Tri-Valley area have not been participating in to date, and possibly even a literary festival. So it's been a busy year and a half, and I was, the Commission for the Arts have unofficially asked me to serve a second term, but I haven't gotten my official letter yet. But anyway, so I expect to be here for a little while longer. Does anyone have any questions?
Questions? Vice Mayor Carling?
So, nice report, and you're obviously very busy, but can you tell me what poetry in a test tube is?
Poetry in a Test Tube is a science poetry contest. We have 3 divisions. The first year, this is the 3rd year. The first year we just had everybody competed, so adults were competing with kids. So I will say, as one of the winners that year, it was a little embarrassing, you know, to like beat out a 10-year-old who just read a really awesome, you know, poem. But we were competing blind, so, you know, the poet laureate at the time had no way of knowing. But anyway, so when I took over, I went to the Commission for the Arts and I said, you know, I don't want adults competing with kids again. So we now have 3 divisions. So there's K through 8, teens, and then adults. And the first year we had about 30, I think roughly 30 people submitted poems. And last year that we increased that to 55. So I'm hoping to, you know, increase that further this year. So as Mayor Marchand can attest, it was a really fun event.
It was.
Last year. You know, we had, you know, a kindergartner who got 3rd place in the, wrote an awesome poem, got up there, managed to stand in front of everyone. She like didn't want to use the mic, but I said, okay, you got to talk loud. And she like read her poem, and she was just so thrilled to get that $25 prize money. That was like the hugest thing, you know, ever. So she was like planning out what she was going to, you know, buy with that. But so it's, you know, a nice way to celebrate science and poetry.
Thanks very much.
Councilmember Monroe?
That was wonderful. I had no idea the breadth and scope of what you were doing, and I really appreciate it. I am wondering, you don't happen to have a sample to read, do you?
I do, as a matter of fact. A little bird, you know, suggested that I might bring a poem. And since, for those of you who don't know, Livermore is home to some fabulous client scientists, and this is also where you know, we have our science poetry contest ongoing, and February is Livermore's Science and Engineering Month. So with all that in mind, I wrote a poem to give a shout out. I thought it was a good time to give a shout out to our climate scientists at the lab. And so anyway, that's what my poem's about. So I will. This is called Data Don't Lie. In an era when no one can agree on things as simple as facts, a team of climate scientists revolt by rejecting the whims of leaders who refuse to lead. They understand that alternate facts do not alter the troubling truth. You can strip information from a website, repeat falsehoods again and again, but that will not halt sea level rise, prevent glacier melt, or patch threadbare ozone. You can exit a global treaty and polar bears will still drown, temperatures still rise, weather grow ever more extreme. Here in our Golden Valley, beneath the shifting shadows of windmills, electric cars purr as they pass ranches and vineyards. We stroll downtown, confident the past and the present can coexist, certain we can adapt in uncertain times. Solar panels drink the sun, fueling us, filling us, and the scientists publish fact upon fact, refusing to be silenced, reminding us that what enhances innovation is not obedience and conformity, but rather tolerance and integrity. Like our planet, we thrive when we embrace diversity, truth, and the ever-evolving future. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you.
Anyway, if anyone wants poetry in a test tube flyer, I've got a few of them. And if you guys don't have any more questions, I'll...
Well, just one more heads up, just to let everybody know, there will be a new poem on June 15th. Maybe you don't know about this yet.
No, I don't.
Okay, so you heard it here first. So
Okay.
June 15th at 10 o'clock, we will be holding the ribbon cutting on the new Emergency Operations Center
Oh, okay. We
and
have a
Community
date for
Meeting
that.
Facility, which is coming up right around the corner here. And in that will be the John Shirley Council Chambers. So
Okay.
something that we're all very excited about. The Emergency Operations Center, something that we've been, as much as we love this 30-year-old triple-wide trailer, we will be moving out of it. And that will be June 15th, the weekend after the rodeo.
Okay, June 15th at 10?
Yes, 10 o'clock.
I will get that on my calendar.
Pardon me?
11, I believe.
Do we move it to 11?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I happen to know
You know more than I do then. Okay. Well, watch for the news. If you get there at 10 o'clock, you're guaranteed a space.
Yes.
And then, so June 15th, Saturday. We'll see
I
you
will
there.
have a new poem ready.
Great. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Thank you. And then the Human Services Commission annual update. We have Rovi Lynn Antonio.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. My name is Rovi Lynn Antonio, and I'm the chair of the city's Human Services Commission this year. And we're here to provide you with an annual report. But before I start my presentation, if you don't mind indulging me in a couple minutes to acknowledge my family who I'm missing dinner with right now. The consolation prize I told them is that I would say hello to them publicly. So, hello, husband. Hello, Bella, Addison, and Charlotte. Mommy's missing dinner, but I'll be home by dessert. Thank you. So I wanted just to share a few highlights of our work. As you know, that we are in charge of the recommending some grants that the city has for a lot of nonprofits who provides essential services for the city. And in the past couple of years, we have been providing significant grants for organizations like the Meals on Wheels. It's for seniors that serves Livermore's frail and elderly senior, and we provide them about 2 to 3 different meals annually. And we've provided about 172 so far. We've also given money for Abode's tenant-based rental assistance. This targets the homeless and those at risk of homelessness, and we've assisted 8 individuals by providing rental housing subsidies, assistance, and case management services. Another organization is City Serve of the Tri-Valley. They provide crisis stabilization to about 569 clients. These are just a few of the services that that the city has funded using these grants. We choose some of these grants and organization based on the established city council goals and priorities. One of them being to support and develop a continuum of housing services that will increase access to low-income seniors, disabled, and homeless persons. 2 is to improve community health and access to basic and specialty care, including dental and optometry care, substance abuse, behavioral and mental health care services, especially for those who are low income, underinsured, and underinsured residents. And it's also to foster and encourage innovative programs that meet emerging community needs that emphasis on low income and the underserved population. The commission has also taken in a lot of, I would say, different roles this year than the commission has done before. New to us is being more proactive in the work that we do in the community. One of the suggestions from conversations in the commission is that we really wanted to get to know the service providers in the area. We wanted to know who are these applicants that are coming in and asking for these precious grant funds. And we wanted to know how exactly are they helping Livermore residents directly. So as a commission, we've made a decision to all be proactive and actually get in the community and get to know these service providers by doing on-site visits. We got a list of all of our applicants and have visited their organizations, met with their executive directors, and got engaged with them on discussions on how they serve Livermore residents, how they choose their clients, and how they best spend these money, since it's limited funding that they get to understand exactly how we can get the best bang for the buck. In addition to that, we also wanted to understand what the community wants and the needs of the community, Livermore residents need. So we have partnered with city staff to host 2 series of workshops and invited community members on an open forum night to understand what are the concerns that it's a priority of the community. And the topics range from homelessness, seniors, youth, employment, education, and housing. So we had these meetings in over a course of 2 workshops and had about 43 different community participants come to the meeting. It was important for us to have the meeting because we wanted to give residents a different venue to come and tell us the concerns that the neighborhoods have. We understand that not everybody can make to the city council meetings. Sometimes people get very intimidated by coming here to face people like you guys. And so we figured that if they come to a commission meeting where we're all volunteer, kind of just we're here because we have a passion for the subject matters, it would be easier for them to engage the community on what are the concerns of Livermore. We did identify some priorities based on these workshops. Number 1 being the need for more case management and education. This was across multiple categories that case management and navigation services were identified as a critical components for success. Public education on issues and available services was identified as helpful in increasing awareness and early intervention. And then obviously the big topic was housing. So, we heard a lot about increasing the number of affordable units for seniors, families, and those at risk of homelessness, housing counseling on available programs that are out there to keep people in place at home, and also legal aid. On homelessness, there was, needs for temporary, transitional, and emergency shelter, including safe parking, increase in shelter beds, and establishing transitional units, basic needs like showers, restrooms, storage, and employment-related services, and some other safety net services like food, health, that also includes physical, mental health, substance abuse, and dental. For public health, there was a lot of talk about the lack of particular services in the Tri-Valley. So these are access to mental, behavioral, substance abuse counseling, access to dental services, assistance for developmental and physical disabilities, and access to daycare. And also transportation was an issue with transit to and from healthcare providers. So all of the things that we've heard we're all taking it in as commissioners on what to do now with the grant process that we're currently in this fiscal year in 2019-2020. We've commenced with hosting a grant workshops of some of these service providers to come to our meetings and talk to us about their needs and why they are applying for certain grant funds and who they're going to. I believe we've got about 31 applicants this year and about $940,000 available in grant funding. So while we don't have a hefty budget, we are identifying ways on how we can stretch that and again get the most bang for the buck. So a lot of it is open communications with the service providers and identifying their needs, identifying what the our constituents' needs are, and just trying to be a conduit to both parties. And it's going to be another busy year, and we look forward to coming to the County Council for more updates on what we're doing, and we invite members of the community to come visit us at some of our meetings.
Very good. Thank you. Do you have any questions from the Councilmember Coomber?
Thank you for a very, very thorough and candid update. That was a lot of stuff going on that I wasn't fully aware of, and I appreciate the update. And thanks for getting into it to the depth that you did.
Any questions? Vice Mayor Carling?
Yeah, thank you. Also, I appreciate all the hard work and the information that you've gathered. Is there a way you provided a fair amount of information tonight about the results of the couple of workshops? Mm-hmm. Is there a report that you're going to be putting together, or is there a way that the community can learn more about the results of those workshops?
Yes, and I'll defer to city staff for that question. From my understanding is there is a document that will be available for public view.
Great, okay. Claudia Young?
We actually have a summary of the priorities in the minutes, but we can make it available on our website under the Human Services Commission.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good place. I mean, I think the more places we put this kind of information, the better. Not everybody looks at these meetings or at the website, so I think if we can do whatever we can to get the information out to the public, I think that'd be great.
Okay, we can
Thank
do
you.
that for you.
Councilmember Warner?
Yeah, thank you for the report. And I was also going to say that it was very helpful to have clarity on the priorities, and that what we need to as a community is kind of align on them, so that the more that it gets out there, that we can then, make sure that the resources that we do have available are properly allocated. So thank you.
Councilmember Monroe?
I mostly just don't want to be left out. I wanted to actually appreciate, so as part of the Homelessness Subcommittee, Vice Mayor Carling and I as you know, a month ago or so, we attended one of the meetings, and I was just very impressed with the work that you've been doing and continue to do, and your summary here has been extremely helpful. Thank you.
And again, the commission has a tremendous amount of work, because you've got to strike that balance of, you can't give everybody all the money they need, but you need to have enough that you can give them. It's enough money to make a difference. So it's a tremendous amount of effort. And did I understand you to say that that your committee or your commission supports the efforts of CityServe, which provides services and support to over 500 people? Was that what you said?
Yes, it was about 569 clients, crisis stabilization.
Wow. So CityServe service. So you're supporting the efforts of CityServe, which provides support and services to over 500 people, 560. That's tremendous. And thank you so much for all the great work that you do. And great report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions, comments? Great. Ruby Lynn, thank you. And thanks to your family for letting us borrow you for a little while tonight.
Thank you.
Well, very good. Well, thank you. With that, we'll move on from proclamations and presentations to Citizens Forum. These are items, thanks, Scouts. The Citizens Forum, these are items that are not on the agenda. The City Council can neither deliberate nor take action tonight on these. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. With that, I've got Van Rainey, Angie Marshall, and Greg Scott. Mr. Rainey.
My name is Van Rainey, Mayor Marchand, City Council members. Let me start off by thanking our poet laureate for providing a preamble to the subject matter that I'm here to talk about. And basically, after attending the special workshop last Tuesday, session on goals and priorities last Tuesday at the Central Library, I was disappointed to see there was no policy or subset of policies that was dedicated to addressing what the city could do in the effort to defeat climate change. Recognizing that climate change is a worldwide dilemma, I think that it is critical that everyone and every level of government that represents the interests of the citizenry do what they can to combat this impending crisis. I believe that the city can take philosophical stands like joining other cities and communities in support of movements like We're Still In support of the Paris Accord, and even endorsing those efforts in support of the Green New Deal. But I believe that we must also take concrete steps in directing the city and its staff towards measures which serve to reverse climate impacts. My first ask of the city is to take steps to update our climate action plan. This plan has not been updated since 2012 when it was initially established, and a lot of things have changed since then. State goals have changed, emerging technologies have presented themselves, and even with the coming Title 24 that starts in effect on January 1st, 2020, there's going to be a lot of significant changes that are being required of the building codes, and would encourage you to take steps to make sure that we're ready for that, if not when 2020 shows up, in advance of that. And how the city will deal with and preferably embrace these numerous changes to assure the community that we are doing all that we can to solve the problem we characterize as climate change. The issues are numerous, and comprehensive set of policies should be incorporated into our set of goals. The details of some of those recommendations are listed in my written statement, but one of the things I would like to ask is that I would encourage that the City Council reestablish the Energy and Environment Commission to enlist the support of members of the community who recognize the importance of the issues and are willing to study and make recommendations to the City Council on what the community could do to advance any efforts to combat the impacts of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rainey. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, Angie Marshall, Greg Scott, and Ann Brown.
Sarah is going to be passing out something that I'd like you to review. I know you cannot comment on it. However, I felt I'm puzzled, and I would like the council to review the information. I've been interested in purchasing a below market rate home for quite some time now, ever since I lost my home in the divorce. I applied for the BMR program in the year 2017, 2018. I was disqualified from that. I was puzzled as to why, so I actually looked up the resolution on the when they established the first-time homebuyers program. That is one of the things that's included. It is Resolution 2001-204. On page 2, you'll see that they list the guidelines of the Inclusionary housing program, and 1A specifically says, a first-time home buyer is an individual or household that has not owned a home as their primary residence for the last 3 years. I fit that qualification because it was not my primary residence that I had owned in 2016. So I was puzzled and saw that there was another item on the agenda that went before council on November 26, 2012 regarding the same program. In the staff report, they list 3 changes that they're going to make to the program, none of which are the definition of a first-time home buyer. So I was devastated and puzzled as to how this happened, because I always believed that staff reports were meant to take place in a transparent way. When I asked the housing department about this, I was told that the definition has always been the same since its conception. I don't understand how this is the case. I see it. I don't know how council feels about it, but I believe I should have been qualified and in a lottery for a below market rate based on the first definition, and nothing that I saw had changed in that, or requested that council change that in the year 2012. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Marshall. Greg Scott, Ann Brown, Kyoko Takayama.
I am Greg Scott. I speak on homelessness in Livermore. I also write the Homeless Games letters to the editor for the Independent local newspaper. Much appreciation to the Independent for publishing the letters. It was heartening to see 3 letters to the editor on homelessness in the last issue of the Independent. Much appreciation to Mr. Glenn Stewart of Livermore for writing his Tri-Valley Homeless letter. Mr. Stewart wrote about a group called BoulderShelter.org, which is a coordinated entry provider in Boulder, Colorado. What would be informative to Mr. Stewart and all of us is a data dump of the number of homeless in Livermore who have done the paperwork for coordinated entry and how long they have been sleeping in the rough, unsheltered since the coordinated entry paperwork initiation. This same information from BoulderShelter.org would give a relative comparison of performance. Another informative exercise for Mr. Stewart and others concerned would be the list of Human Services Commission grants specifically under the category of housing and homeless, which is around half the total monies of the grants. A table could be made of the City of Livermore entries and the percentages of money requested per the monies granted. Another table could be made of the other service providers and their percentage monies requested per their monies granted. Welcome to the homeless games. If we are to address overall causalities of homelessness, then we must address spiraling housing costs, a faulty benefit system, and a lack of social housing. Any solution needs to apply the ABCs of homeless solutions. A, for autonomy, that is a path to self-reliance. B, for belonging, that is being part of a healthy social structure. C is for contributing, which would be fairly paid, adequate employment. It should be realized that the abstract of the Maslow pyramid is wrong. The Maslow pyramid is a pyramid where psychological needs of shelter, potable water, warmth, and food are at the base. Safety needs are above that. Belongingness and love needs are above that. Next would be esteem needs, and the top being self-actualization. Self-actualization and esteem needs are needed for psychological needs. If self-actualization and esteem and other layers are needed for the bottom layer of psychological needs, how is it hierarchical? It is not. It's a matrix, especially for homelessness. I am all for compassion and empathy. However, open compassion and open empathy can be deleterious unless we ask, what are we enabling? If we are not on the right pathway, how are we going to be solving homelessness? Regular housing is not going to solve homelessness. We do not have the resources. Construing money expenditures with results is not going to solve homelessness. If it was not for socioeconomic politics and inequitable and unjust cultural norms, homelessness would scarcely exist. This has been true for a while. Henry George wrote about it in his book, Progress and Poverty. The book was written in San Francisco, and it was published in 1879.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Ann Brown, Kyoko Takayama, Nikki No.
Hello, good evening, council members and mayor and staff. As you review priorities for the next 2 years, I'm here to add my voice to other citizens in urging the City Council to seize this moment to steer Livermore towards a healthy, prosperous, and sustainable future. The Tri-Valley chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby was founded here in last September. We now have 118 members and are growing with each outreach event. Here are steps that we urge you to take to promote effective solutions to climate change. Join the more than 3,600 organizations across the U.S. in declaring that we are still in with the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement to hold global warming to well below 2 degrees C and accelerate the transition to a clean energy economy that will benefit our security, prosperity, and health. Join the 108 cities who have pledged to be powered with 100% clean, renewable energy by 2050. 6 cities have already met this goal. We request a report on the city's climate action plan and urge that an Environment Commission be reestablished to update the goals of the plan if needed. We stand ready to lend support and participate. Livermore is well positioned to be a regional and state leader by joining We Are Still In and/or pledging to be ready for 100. In founding the 504th chapter of the Citizens Climate Lobby, we have joined a bipartisan movement to pass legislation based on the research of scientists and economists to find the most effective solution for climate disruption. We are excited that a bill that is based on this solution, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, H.R. 763, has been reintroduced in the House of Representatives. We ask that the Council learn about this bill and its benefits to the Livermore economy and environment. We request that the Council join dozens of others in issuing a resolution endorsing the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act. This resolution will send a strong message to Representative Eric Swalwell, whom we hope will co-sponsor the bill. This action will also inspire our local community to reduce our community's carbon footprint. The Tri-Valley chapter of CCL is ready to meet and share resources with the council members and the mayor. We can provide interactive tools that model local impacts under differing greenhouse gas emission levels. We can also share current successful resolutions from cities like Santa Rosa, as well as templates to customize for Livermore. Thank you for your attention and your leadership in transforming Livermore to respond to our changing climate and to protect our citizens and environment.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Kyoko Takayama, Nikki No, and Connie Copps.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Council members. I really wanted to thank all of you to adopt EBCE and join the Community Energy Choice program. Thanks to that program, today my electricity is 100% renewable, and it's only $4 per month extra money. And since my roof was covered by a lot of trees, solar panel was not my option. So I'm really happy about it. I'm also friends of EBCE, a volunteer to do the outreach effort. Unfortunately, Livermore's opt-out rate is over 7%. And I just cannot believe it is because people do not care about climate change. Today, you can actually pay exactly the same PG&E price to be carbon neutral. And that should be really a great choice for everybody, including municipal account for Livermore City. So I would like to ask City to consider to opt up to Brilliant 100. That's one ask. Second ask is to offer more information to our residents, because I believe Livermore residents care about climate change, and they will be ready to fight alongside with the city members. One of the things I noticed was there is no information on the city website. That would be great addition. And also probably give some information why you are doing this through the newsletter or nextdoor.com. More information will help residents to understand how great this program is. So I really would like you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Takayama. Nikki No, Connie Copps, and John Stein.
Hello. Thank you very much for letting me speak. I'm just a citizen. I've been working with Kyoko, and was very, very pleased to be at the meeting when the county decided to start with the Citizens the East Bay Energy. So I was happy when Livermore decided to join. However, I had to have Kyoko come over to help me understand exactly what those charges are on our PG&E bill. It is horrible. And I'm on Nextdoor, and I saw people opting out. That's when I called Kyoko. I said, come on, I know I'm in, but I want to understand what this is. So she showed me, and I think everybody needs to have that information. I'm retired. I don't have a lot of extra money, but I'm willing to pay an extra $4 a month to be at Brilliant 100. I think that's the least I can do for my world. So that's what I'm just asking you to do, is update, as Kyoko asked, to the Brilliant 100, and please make an extra special effort to make it clear to people. And I know that the city is on Nextdoor, so that's the first place to go, but also on the website and the newsletter would be very helpful. So that's what I have to say about that. I want to say one thing for our poet laureate. I am so glad that she is looking for a grant for Poetry Out Loud. I have been to the state Poetry Out Loud competition for 3 years, And it is the most outrageous thing you could ever imagine. These children are so wonderful. You hear the same poem over and over and over presented by these different kids, and every single one of them is moving. So I'm so glad that we are going to think about getting into it. I really hope you support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Connie Copps, John Stein, Carl Wente.
Hi, I'm Connie Copps on Tulip Way with my company Use a Bag, a Lot of Bag, and I wanted to come in and apologize for not being a little bit more prepared. On December 27th, I sent a letter out welcoming Adam Vanderwater to our Office of Innovation and to welcome him to our economic development. And I kind of just went through and in my letter explained my business, explained my drive, my motivation, and I think it would really solve a lot of problems if I can get in the stores with my concepts of funding unfunded liabilities, maybe creating funds to create jobs to help our homeless population. Bob Warner, I think the first time I met you, we were picking up litter behind Walmart for the Earth Day, and we were picking up litter along the creek on the pickup day, and it was really different. There weren't tents, there weren't people living along that stream. I feel like I've been really stoked about seeing this project in motion, my business in motion, but again, it takes partnerships. It would add to the economy, I think, in a positive way. And I think it keeps a voice going. I know a lot of times when we're helping the environment, we're mandating different deals to help people be a little bit more conscious to the environment. And I don't know how much you know about my business, each and every one of you, because I've been all over the place with it. But again, it's focused games on reusable bags. One such game would be like an array of points that are given to a person who brings a reusable bag to the store. And this bag could, and I know sometimes it conflicts with different promotions that stores are already doing. I contacted some of them, like Safeway first, probably because they had a rewards program that I knew could deal with an array of a point system. But prior to that, I actually wrote the President of the United States because as a baby boomer, a tail-end baby boomer who was kind of worried about Social Security being like solvent by the time I, put in, would get anything out of it. So I wanted to offset the population that wouldn't be contributing to old girls like me or people like me. So anyhow, I wrote this letter on December 27th. I sent it early January to him. I haven't really heard anything from him, and I will get in touch on that. I had spoke with him a little bit on a different meeting, and I will let you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Copps. John Stein, Carl Wente, Jackie Nielsen.
Good evening. John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. The forward planning has been focused on the downtown for the last more than 2 years. Hopefully that's at an end now on the super block or the old Lucky site. There are now other issues that need the council's attention. In planning, the only constant is change. If some of you still remember Michael Friedman, he said specific plans and even general plans are only really effective for the first 5 to 7 years. And the downtown specific plan is more than twice that age. In the downtown, some of the changes that have occurred since the plan was implemented are the end of redevelopment and incremental tax funding for the regional theater, the construction of a multi-screen movie theater, the demographics that have changed dramatically. The young urban professionals are now 15 or 20 years older and have families and SUVs and probably don't want to live in one-bedroom apartments. We really didn't get what the plan said, which was supposed to be an array of specialty shops, if you remember, window door downtown, but Amazon came along. And what we really got was a highly successful regional entertainment and hospitality center. People come from all over the Bay Area to dine and drink and watch entertainment downtown. But I do think it is time to re-examine that. There are still over 3,000 units that are planned for the downtown. And if those go into place, it will gridlock traffic, and spillover parking will affect much of the parking that the businesses depend on. Demolition and construction will affect existing businesses, and many of the existing businesses will be displaced from Railroad Avenue and from First Street. So it would also behoove us, I think, to begin redoing that plan. Other issues are in South Livermore, we're facing the Regional Water Quality Control Board and the state requirements for sewage disposal. And in order to ensure that wine country continues to have tasting rooms and event centers, the city will have to supply sewage capacity. In North Livermore, it would be nice to have a seat at the table with the county and state in planning North Livermore. We're hearing about solar farms and housing initiatives that could drastically affect North Livermore. It's always easier to proactively plan rather than waiting for an applicant. In the legal profession, there's the statement that individual cases make bad laws in the same way individual applicants often make bad planning. So I would urge that the city begin looking at forward planning for both North and South Livermore. And also, as an aside, it would be nice to have some sort of design review to improve the quality of the construction we're seeing throughout the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Carl Wente, Jackie Nielsen, Jacqueline Renkel.
Honorable Mayor and Council, Carl Wente, 5 generations of Livermore, but I do live just a half a mile outside of town, so I couldn't vote for any of you all. I'd like to thank you all for your service to Livermore and for what you do to make it a better place. It's very much appreciated. Staff, everything that you all do to make this a great place, I appreciate it. As always, those that put on a bulletproof vest to go to work, we salute you for our safety. To the Poet Laureate, thank you for keeping that alive, the spirit of that. My family's big into cowboy poetry and done a lot of shows, been out to Elko and seen that, so thank you for what you do. The Health and the Human Service Commission of getting the bang for the buck, and action is needed, investigation is not needed. We know there's a homeless problem. I thank you both on the subcommittee for running towards action, right? We can study a problem and say that there's a problem. We had to have a resolution to take last year's money and move it forward because we couldn't spend the money, yet there's people out there that are hungry and missing a meal. So I just appreciate action going forward, and I have all the faith that you will. Also, what a celebration that no one's talking about downtown. Yeah, Mr. Stein brought it up, but he said that's largely behind us. This is awesome because there are better things to do across this great town. I salute those people. I salute the fact that these stands are full. There's people here that are passionate, are out and coming and talking and living and learning. I love seeing the Boy Scouts, the next generation, Girl Scouts, the next generation of non-inert citizenry to help this democratic republic keep persevering through and through. I salute those people that are talking about climate change. I salute us taking a leadership role in this. We know there's change out there coming. We know that it's there, but those that are here and talking about it, right on. The Energy and Environmental Commission seems like something we should dust off, right? And I'm assuming you all will take action and agree with that. I didn't put in my card for 4.01 through 4.05, but I want to thank Mr. Alessio and Mr. Roberts and their whole entire team for all of the work that goes into that. That omnibus ordinance, there was a lot of detail to get through in that one. I tried my darndest. I don't totally understand all of it, but I will continue to study this all the way through. So, but in summary, Livermore is an awesome, awesome place. You all contribute to that. The staff is awesome, and let's continue to make Livermore the best that it could be. I thank you all.
Thank you. Jackie Nielsen and Jacqueline Wrinkle.
Good evening. I didn't come prepared to speak, but I'm speaking on behalf of my daughter. We have one post office here in town, and the crosswalk in front of it is quite a hazard. And we have gone to the police department and got nothing. We have gone to volunteers and have had nothing. We have had some deaths, and what does it take to have someone actually do a good study on that crosswalk, because it is a very big hazard, and I'm quite concerned about it. And I know my daughter has texted you or Facebooked you, Mayor, and she's been doing this for over 10 years, and I don't want to see her injured. She means a lot to me. I don't know what else to say. I think we need to do more about this crosswalk. Thank you.
And just to say, she did email me last night, and I did respond to her already. In fact, I've responded to her twice.
Yes, I know that, but
Okay.
the police department haven't done anything, and I know there are ways. I've been downtown Hayward, and they have a lot of extra things and safety things in action, and I can't see why Livermore can't do it and spend a few dollars.
If you could please give your contact information to Paul Spence, just write it on a well. I've got your card here, but he'll give you his card, and you can get in touch with him, and he can follow up with you on that.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Jacqueline Wrinkle. Hopefully, I got that fairly right.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Oh, good, thank you.
Jacqueline Taryn Rankle, born and raised in Livermore, and married at Winty. Hey! Love this town. I wanted to kind of piggyback on to what several people already mentioned. EBCE, I'm very pleased that we have that option now, and I, like another speaker here, was not aware that you had to actually opt up. That some cities, like Hayward and Fremont, they were able, their deal, they were able to be in that second category of no carbon from the get-go. And I wish we would have done that, but we didn't. But I would like to say that if the city has the option for other municipal accounts that are not supported by these wonderful solar panels over here, that the city itself opts up into Brilliant 100 or even better, into the 100% renewable. So I think that's very important. I also would like to tag on to what other people said about the Paris climate change. Every city should be doing this. This is not a political issue. This is a life and death issue, and we're all going to feel it in the future. I also took a look at the city's website and looked at the 2002 Climate Action Plan. And it doesn't look like it's been updated in a while. There's a couple broken links on a couple of places in the website when you try to link to it, but I was able to get to it. And there's some pretty hefty goals by 2050, and I'd like to see an update on that plan and see where we're at, how we measured up to our goals, and how we're looking for next year's goals and 2050 and beyond. And then the one last comment, and this is really for the Park District, but I'm going to mention it here since It's on Channel 30. I back up to Ravenswood, and today, the past couple days, they've been over there tearing off all the railings of the mansion and all the 100-year-old spindles of the mansion. And they have them all piled up in a garbage heap in a big trailer. And we've been trying to get a hold of the Park District to find out what they're doing with those. Hopefully they're reusing them in the mansion since it's a historical site. But they cannot be destroyed, and I think that we need to preserve what we can, or at least give them to an antique dealer or something else. But hopefully the city can follow up with that, and I will continue to try to reach the Park District about that. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ms. Renkel. Just a quick question for staff. I recall that they were renovating the porch at Ravenswood. So, Mr. Spence, could you speak to that, please?
Yes, they are renovating the porch. I'm not sure what the status is for the spindles. We certainly can follow up with
I remember there was quite a bit of discussion about whether they're going to be reused or recreated. So,
You can't get that wood anymore.
yeah, so check in with the Park District. Very good. Thank you. Oh, yes. And finally, we have Evan Branning.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you, Council and staff. I wasn't planning on speaking at this point, actually, but I just wanted to mention something really briefly. So first of all, I thank everyone who's talked before me. I appreciate the comments on EBCE and on climate change and how important that is. But I did want to make sure, actually, that you do listen to Angie's request. It is something that's important for the city is when we have people who are currently sheltered and are having trouble with transition, it is much cheaper, easier, and less disruptive for the city as a whole, as well as for the people who are being displaced, to be able to stay in their homes, to be able to stay in shelter. And I know she's been struggling with this for at least a couple of years now with kind of where she stands in this process. And so I know you've been working with her, but I do hope you'll take that very seriously, because this is an issue where when someone is forced out of the home that they're currently in, it is often very difficult for them to find another place to stay, especially staying in the community where she has served with the city and served us so well. So I hope you'll take this seriously, and I hope you'll look into some way to make sure that she is able to keep her home. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Branning. Okay, that is the end of the Citizens Forum. Moving on to the consent calendar. These are items that are typically routine nature and are usually passed on a single motion. Does anybody on the council wish to pull anything for discussion on? Okay, so we have. Okay, I'm going to take public comment first, since we have public comment on. Let's do this. Okay, I have. Request to speak on 4.01, 4.03, and 4.05. Does the city clerk have one on 4.04 by any chance, or is that for another? Okay, it's another issue. Okay, so could I get a motion for 4.02 and 4.04?
I'll move.
Moved by Councilmember Coomer, seconded by
I'll second.
Councilmember Monroe. Any discussion on 4.02 and 4.04? No discussion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. 4.02 and 4.04 pass. 4.01. Carl Wente.
Honorable Mayor, Council, I apologize for taking your time. I'd like to say thank you for the minutes, just to get that out of the way. And I'd like to say, may we embrace diversity, truth, in the ever-evolving future. Thank you to the Poet Laureate. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Wente. 4.03, which is the introduction of an omnibus ordinance to amend various sections of the Municipal Code and Development Code to update, clarify, and revise existing sections. Connie Copps, 4.03.
Hi, I'm Connie Copps on Tulip Way, and I am presenting a little letter here to the city planners and to Mayor John Marchand, city council members, staff, Katrina, Fabian, Steve Stewart, I guess, and Planning Commission. And it's item 403, the omnibus. And it has to do with the municipal code and the developmental code sort of being in sync. But here's my letter. Dear city planners and city officials, on February 5th at the Planning Commission, I spoke to oppose item 6.01. Item 4.03 also addresses these items. In today's 4.03 omnibus, section 2AA, section 10.04.030, the property line adjustment requires only permission from the record owner, and I want that defined. The record owner of the impacted property. Changing land lines often impact more than one property. And an example of this would be a property that was sold on 1031 Bluebell, where the property line had to be adjusted because the new owners didn't want to cross a line where there was a swimming pool. They didn't want the liability. But then the other property in that area, of course, had the liability of that. And so it's best to study these areas in full, examining the title and the title, the liens, the deeds. Zoning also needs to be looked at better as questions to when and where and who and how original zoning maps had happened. Legitimate questions need to be answered before we can be locked into the current zoning maps. And there's an example of that. I drew a little picture of where on my title I have common property with other people in my neighborhood, and it actually is on the land that was designated open space. It was the old golf course. And so I'm kind of concerned about different the properties that butt up to that and the people that control that. I don't know that people have been informed properly. We do have a HOA board that talks to planning, talks to public works, and that, but they don't talk to us enough in a time we only meet every other month. And so things happen that I think aren't timely. And I appreciate your looking at this letter, and attached is a letter that I left for planning when they did 601. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to 4.05, Greg Scott and Lance Bruckner. Mr. Scott.
I am Greg Scott. Homelessness is a life and death issue. I found my friend Carl Feiner lying face down on the ground, dying. He lived in his pickup truck for 10 years. So yes, I'm pretty frustrated with the homeless games. I'm addressing the memorandum from Paul Spence, Community Development Director, dated February 11, 2019, to Honorable Mayor and City Council, with the subject, accept the City Council Subcommittee on Homelessness Work Plan to establish a homeless strategic framework. Quote, housing availability is only one aspect of an individual's life that may contribute to homelessness, unquote. Wait, housing is available. All it takes is a certain amount of money for the most part. Quote, other factors include mental health symptoms, overuse of alcohol or drugs, health conditions, and availability of adequate employment, unquote. Let us focus on adequate employment. Let us say we could possibly find an apartment in Livermore for $2,000 per month. Low, but let us make the math easy. Now, rent should be no more than 30% of gross income. Let us say that 33 1/3% or 1/3 of the gross income for easy math again. Now, adequate income for this apartment would be $6,000 per month or $72,000 per year, which is $36 per hour full time. There are how many jobs of this adequate income for homeless people? Otherwise, the housing is subsidized. Great for the lucky few who receive the subsidy and for the landlords. What about the others who do not receive the subsidy? Safe parking at rotating locations. Was not the idea of the $17 million Vineyard 2.0 to centralize? Why not safe parking on public land? quote, restroom showers, unquote. Restroom showers with attendant. No one wants to find someone passed out on the restroom floor with a needle in their arm and with a syringe of heroin. Nor is the city of Livermore in the business of subsidizing sexcapades. Quote, homeless prevention, unquote, and, quote, temporary interim housing, unquote. How about bridge housing? Why does it have to be the expense of regular housing? Quote, permanent affordable housing development with supportive services, unquote. Please define affordable and costs and how results are to be qualified and quantified. Quote, market rate housing acquisition and rehabilitation to secure new units, unquote. Money now grows on trees. Quote, development of its services infrastructure needed to transition people from homelessness, unquote. The homeless would like to hear on adequate employment. How do the employees of the services infrastructure survive on their salaries? What are they being paid? Lead the homeless by example. If we want to solve homelessness, then be sure to collaborate in the workshops with homeless. If anyone wants to know homelessness, try living it.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. Lance Bruckner.
Hello, I'm Lance Bruckner, City Council. I'd like to address some issues here on homeless and thank the Human Services Commission for the work that they've done. We've listened to a number of people talk about multiple issues today, and what my concern is after meeting with some members of the city and reviewing documents, that I find that, like Greg mentioned, we have to rethink in terms of housing. What is housing? What is adequate sizes of housing? And the model that we currently have is inadequate in terms of meeting the needs of the current homeless. I also suggest, I want to suggest to the city and to the commission on human services that they get involved with the Chamber of Commerce and the businesses of our community, because they're the ones that can have the most impact initially and fast in terms of working with the needs of our community. They're the ones that have the jobs available. They're the ones that have the resources available that the city does not have. And I think it'd be a great move if we could really unite the city and our community with the businesses through the Chamber of Commerce to take action to providing steps that would help mitigate the homeless. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruckner. Okay, we're going to close public comment and bring it back to the council. Any comments from the council?
As long as it...
Vice Mayor Carling.
So, Mr. City Manager, the discussion we had this afternoon, did you learn any more about the height of the walls around garbage receptacles and that kind of thing? It seemed to be inconsistent.
Yes, indeed. On the omnibus ordinance there, that essentially we do need to clarify that. And so, Mr. Spence, you've got some
Yes.
This is 4.03.
Yes, 4.03 the omnibus ordinance, and this is paragraph W in your staff report on page 50, and then also reflected on page 58 in the council packet.
Right. Appreciate you bringing that to our attention. We do have a supplemental package that was provided to you on the dais just this evening, just in time, and we have a correction to 4.03 that the maximum height will be to 15 feet to the top of the roof. Or 10 feet to the top of the wall.
Okay.
So that is the intent.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments at this point? Just to address a couple of the comments that we heard, we're working on homelessness. Absolutely we are. As I pointed out, last year, San Francisco spent $241 million trying to resolve homeless issues. City of Oakland has their Tough Shed program. I believe they have about 220 tough sheds, and they have about 4,000 people in Oakland that are suffering from homelessness. So that's not working. Shelters. We've had shelters for generations. That's not working. So what Livermore is studying right now is to find models that work. Orlando, Florida has models that work. Houston, models that work. So does Salt Lake City. So we are trying to follow those models because the goal is to not just move the people that are experiencing homelessness around. We're trying to lift people out of homelessness. And 13% of the people that are experiencing homelessness are working full time. And you address the point that this is very expensive housing here. There's nothing that the city can do to lower the cost of land or housing. This is the reality of living in the San Francisco Bay Area. When you have 163,000 people are going over the Altamont trying to get to their job centers because they can't afford housing in Silicon Valley. Cupertino with an average home price of over $2 million. It's breathtaking. So it's very complicated. We have people are not smarter than I am that are working on trying to find permanent solutions. It is expensive. It is very complicated, as well you know. But there are 5 people up here, people out in the audience, and people working on from staff that are working very hard on this issue. And we are looking for an ability to lift people out of homelessness and not simply keep them in a state of homelessness. So it is complicated. It's going to be expensive, but we're committed to finding solutions. So thank you for the comments today. Mr. Bruckner has already left, but we are committed to find a solution for this. So thank you very much for your comments. With that, I'm going to take a motion for 4.01, 03, and 05.
I'll move we accept 4.01, 4.03, and 4.05.
Is there a second?
Go ahead.
I second.
Seconded by Councilmember Monroe. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Great, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to 5.01. This is the Plan Development Industrial 18-002 Site Plan Design Review. Ben Murray, our senior planner.
Thank you. The project site for this project is an approximately 19-acre site. It's located at the southwest corner of Jack London Boulevard, which is here, and Isabel Avenue. The Livermore Airport is located to the northwest. The water treatment plant is to the north. There's a commercial development to the northeast. Single-family residential located to the east. This is Isabel Avenue. This building is operated by Tesla. This is the Gillig bus plant. Cable Wholesale is located to the west of the property, and a large parking lot for the Gillig facility. The site is zoned planned development, and the general plan designation is business and commercial park. The proposed building measures about 373,000 square feet, and the majority of that will be used for warehouse and distribution. About 8% of the building area will be office. The project provides 295 vehicle parking spaces, which are located adjacent to Voyager Street and in the northwest corner of the property. There are 50 loading docks distributed between the north and south sides of the building, and parking along the southern property line for 49 truck trailers. The landscape frontage setbacks on all of the street frontages exceed the minimum requirements, except for one location here along Voyager Street where the applicant has asked for a 1-foot reduction to accommodate the shifting and existing median a little bit east. widening this intersection to improve turning movements for existing truck traffic and for traffic for the project. The project also provides a community-wide benefit by completing a missing segment of the city's trail network. As the project develops, it will complete a segment of trail that runs from Isabel Avenue along the project frontage to Voyager Street. This image here is of the existing trail just west of the property. And so the project will provide a similar arrangement shown in section here. There's a paved trail adjacent to the street and a decomposed granite multi-use path in from that. One difference between the two is this row of trees on the project will be located here on either side of the decomposed granite trail. The proposed contemporary styled architecture includes vertical and horizontal plane changes and a material palette that complements the nearby Oaks Business Park developments. The projecting office volumes that are located at all four corners of the building help screen views from the streets to the loading docks, and they also provide noise attenuation. The project utilizes the building layout, landscape, topography, and where necessary, screen walls to help screen the truck docks from view from the public streets. In the early stages of design development, staff worked with the applicant to develop a site plan that oriented the truck doors north and south rather than east, which again is towards the residents. This combined with the limits on nighttime operations that are in the PD district helped this project comply with the city's noise standards. The screen wall varies from 4 feet to 8 feet in height and includes stone-clad pilasters that occur every 15 to 29 feet. The wall is begins here and then runs along the Jack London frontage and then wraps around. In this area, the building is well articulated and architecturally detailed, and this is just a driveway around the building, so there's no need for a wall there. There's no truck docks either. So this is a decorative metal fence with a double row of trees, and then the wall picks up again. In this area, there's about a 4-foot tall berm with a 4-foot tall wall on top of it, and then the wall wraps around. And that, again, provides noise attenuation as well as screening of the truck docks when viewed from Isabel Avenue. Since the site has planned development zoning, the applicant has requested a planned development district that includes several relatively minor variations from the default zoning standards. The first is a request for an increase in the allowable building height to allow the 45-foot tall building walls and 49-foot projections at the corners. The default height limit for this site would be 40 feet. Again, I mentioned the 1-foot requested reduction in the street frontage landscape along Voyager Street. And then finally, the PD includes a land use standard specifically for the intended tenant of the building. So the PD allows the larger warehouse area with the additional truck docks, but it prohibits semi-truck activity during the nighttime hours from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and limits box truck movement during those nighttime hours to just 6 trips. To compensate for these minor variations from the default zoning, the project provides several amenities that include deeper landscape buffers along each of the 3 street frontages. It provides larger trees throughout the site than would be required, and also provides a patio outside for employees of the company. The Planning Commission reviewed the proposal on January 15th and recommended approval, subject to the conditions of approval that are in your packet. And staff has reviewed those conditions and accepted them. So that concludes staff's overview of the project. Again, staff and planning commission recommend approval of the project, and the council's taking of the actions that are listed here on the screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have any questions for the staff at this point?
Just quickly. Could you go over the truck traffic hours again? And are they requesting a change to that? I didn't understand if that was a change to more or less, or they're restricted still?
They are restricted during the nighttime hours. So from, just refresh myself on the
10
hours.
p.m. to-
From 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Okay.
No semi-truck trips are permitted by the zoning, and no more than 6 box truck trips are permitted during those nighttime hours.
And are they requesting a variance to that? And
So-
what
so-
would that variance encompass?
So that is an added condition. Standard industrial zoning does not have any prohibitions or restrictions on truck deliveries or activity, but in concern for impacts to the neighborhood, we added that as a-
Exactly.
as a
Thank you.
condition.
That's my concern too. Thank you.
Councilman Monroe?
So I thought this was a very clear report. As I was looking at the place where it talked about the traffic, I happened to notice that it says, "The building operator shall instruct forklift operators to refrain from excessive honking throughout the buildings." And I guess I'm just wondering, what is excessive honking?
Well, there would need to be a determination of what's necessary for public safety. And if it were found that they were doing it more than what's minimally needed for public safety, that would be excessive.
So let me say that a different way. So I looked at initially I looked at these restrictions given the proximity to houses and the needs of, sort of balancing the two needs, and thought these look fine. I'm wondering if there's a way it could be written a little bit more specifically so that it's excessive, and anything else that might be ambiguous could be defined.
Any questions? There's a bus stop south of Jack London, right in front of Gillig, eastbound. There is no corresponding westbound bus stop. Is there a plan on putting one over there?
There is.
Currently, they got to go down on the other side of Jack London, on the other side of Isabel.
Yes, at the Planning Commission hearing, the city had received a request to look further into that, and it's something that staff has discussed with Prologis, the applicant, and they've discussed it with LAVTA and reached an agreement where this project will provide a bus stop for westbound bus travel on the north side of Jack London, just east of Voyager.
Oh, okay. Oh, very good. Okay, excellent. And in table number 2, it says that there are 39 bicycle spaces required, but then it says the number provided is 30. That's on page 78.
Right. So the plans show the 30. The standard is that they provide 38. So we do have a condition that the project provide the 38 spaces. 39.
39, okay. All right, because the table said that it required was 39, but it was provided was 30. But it is, the 39 is in fact being provided.
It will be per the conditions.
Okay. All right, and okay, I'm glad that I saw that the graffiti, anti-graffiti coating is going to be included on the walls. So great that we're taking a proactive approach on that. So great, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to open up the public hearing. I've got a number of cards here, so I'd like to invite Nicole Shapiro, Fernando Estrada, and Jose Aguirre.
Yeah, Mayor Marchand, I'm sorry. We do have an applicant
Oh,
presentation
okay, I'm
this
sorry.
evening. If we could do that next.
All right, so we'll have the applicant speak first. My apologies.
We thought we were going to get off the hook there, but I guess not. Hi, Darren Kenny here, Prologis, representing the applicant. Thank you all, council members, and mayor. I think we all know why we're here, and we have a phenomenal project here that we've partnered with you, the city, notably Ben and Scott, to, I think, develop what is going to be one of the better looking industrial buildings that we have in our portfolio. And if you know Prologis, we are the largest owner of industrial real estate actually in the world. I think we have somewhat close to 4,000 industrial buildings, some of which look like this, but I can tell you that with the full height glass and kind of the aesthetics that we've outlined here, I think you'll see that this is going to be a major milestone, or at least a gateway to the city of Livermore, and certainly will finish out the park here that you guys have so successfully developed to the south. And I think one thing that we have in front of us too is in planning commission was abreast of this, is that we have a long-term lease signed with RK Logistics, who is a local 3PL, but the underlying tenant that you guys, the city knows very well is Lamb Research, who I believe is one of your largest employers. And we have RK with us today to help guide the city through what their operations look like at this facility. But there's upwards of 500 or so jobs that are held within this facility, amongst a couple shifts that are local jobs, and certainly jobs that are well suited for the city of Livermore. And then lastly, before I hand it over to RK, who's here present, we are a long-term owner. We are not, Prologis is not a merchant developer, nor are we a quick money group. So I think you'll see more projects from us in the city of Livermore. We currently have 5 buildings held within city limits in 2 construction projects, another of which is hopefully, or at least projected to be underway on National and Exchange. But long story short is we are a proud developer owner in the city of Livermore, and I think you'll see more investment from our firm here in the coming years. So with that, I'd like to turn over to Mike Powell with RK, who will give council a little more flavor on exactly what is going inside the building here.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and City staff. My name is Mike Powell, Director of Business Development for RK Logistics Group. Got the call this morning that I would be attending this meeting, so I took a couple of notes real quick to prepare. RK Logistics is a third-party logistics provider supporting Lamb Research with their raw material inventory, kitting, and distribution back to their operations off of, I believe, on Portola. We are a past Employer of the Year recipient, very proud, and we hang that certification in our Livermore facility off of Marathon proudly. We are also a certified minority business enterprise. We are a proud sponsor of Manufacturing Day, and we open up our doors to the community of Livermore and neighboring cities, promoting manufacturing jobs and making manufacturing jobs cool again, to allow us to compete with the Silicon Valley businesses that are constantly promoted. As a third-party logistics provider and this proposed site, it allows RK Logistics to bring their operations closer to Lamb Research, allowing us to keep our trucks riding more efficiently and off of that gridlock on 580 during the commuting hours. Our trucks are mainly straight trucks or bobtail trucks and service vans, mainly operating from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We also have one semi-truck that goes back and forth between the Livermore facility and back over to the city of Fremont. I'm here today just to answer any questions that you may have on our operations, and we look forward to a favorable decision on the proposed site.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Vice Mayor.
I have one for the representative from Prologis. So I appreciate all the attention you've given to some of the issues that have been brought up both by the public and by the staff. And I guess my only point is that I hope if other things come up over the course of development and operation and your management of this facility, that you'll continue to service those questions that might come up in the future.
Yes, the short answer is, of course. And we're here for the community and answering any questions or being there from day one to the
Great.
finish.
Okay. I look forward to what we hear from the community during the public comment next. So,
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions at this point? Okay, now, so we have Nicole Shapiro, Fernando Estrada, and Jose Aguirre. Hold on just a second here. Sherry Sheets, is there another part of the presentation here?
There is not. Honorable Mayor, our presentation is complete this evening. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, sorry. Thank you.
No problem. Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city staff. I'm a resident in the Somerset residence that just backs up to the proposed site here. It's my childhood home of just over 40 years, and I do have some concerns with the warehouse distribution building. I was put slightly at ease at some of the points that were brought up with the larger trees, and some of the sound walls that will be going up, because my main concerns are the noise that we experience with the Tesla distribution center. It does sound like perhaps there were a couple lessons learned there and maybe some changes were put in place. I am still concerned about the loading docks being on the north and south side. On that north side, there is a dip in the sound wall that's on Highway 84, and it seems like those loading docks will kind of line up with the dip in that sound wall. That wall that I'm referring to is on the east side of 84 across the street, and my house is straight back from that dip. So I am concerned about the sound kind of tunneling through that area. I also have concerns about the view of concrete that we will now have. We're used to the view of the Pleasanton Ridge unobstructed until the Tesla buildings went in. And now this new building also, our housing elevation is much higher. So we can see probably like the top 20 feet of those warehouses. And I know that there is landscaping planned, but I don't believe that will help us with the elevation of our homes. And people driving 50 miles per hour down 84, I don't know how concerned they are about seeing loading docks, but I am concerned about seeing the concrete building. Behind our house, in between our house and that sound wall, there's a large dirt berm, and there's nothing planted on it that I can see from my home. So I was requesting that maybe it would be considered that the developers or the companies that are going into these warehouses fund some kind of landscaping for that berm, and looking into native landscaping similar to the Granada native gardens that require little to no watering to help not only with the view of the building, but would also help with the sound carrying through there. Yeah, that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Fernando Estrada.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, staff. My name is Fernando Estrada. I'm the business manager of the Labor's Union here in Alameda County. We actually have our hiring hall also here in Livermore, 2063 Research Drive. I represent over 4,500 construction laborers in Alameda County, with close to 300 of them living right here in Livermore. A lot of them commute throughout the Bay Area, spending less time at home with their families. Projects like this, right on their backyard, will give them the opportunity to work close to home and will give them the opportunity to spend more time with their families instead of on the road. The laborers working on this project will be earning livable wages, plus benefits like pension, health and welfare, and much more. So on behalf of the over 4,500 members that I represent, especially the close to 300 families that call Livermore their home, I ask you to support this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Estrada. Jose Aguirre, Evan Branning, Brian Werner.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, and staff. If you will, indulge me for a minute. All the speakers that came up before me, there was one unifying theme. Let's improve our city. Let's improve our community. As you said it too, Mayor, the multitudes of people coming over the Altamont to go to work every day, it's astounding. The laborers have been in Alameda County for over 100 years. We are Alameda County. We are Livermore. So us that work here, give us the opportunity to work here, to live here, to spend here, to contribute to our community and beautify our community. So again, I urge you, let's move forward with this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aguirre. Evan Branning, Brian Werner, Michael Bland. Mr. Branning.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for letting me speak, Mayor, Council, and thank you for all your hard work, staff. I think this is a great project. I just wanted to start, first of all, by saying that I also support the unions, and I do hope that you will encourage the contractors to work with union labor as well as local labor. I think it is important, the work that unions have done to make sure that people are able to maintain a livable wage, to be able to work where they live, and to be able to actually afford the housing that currently we have in the area. On top of that, there was a few concerns I had, but many of them were actually addressed in the presentation. I'm really excited to see the trail finally getting connected. That's a huge improvement. I hope that that happens as soon as possible. But I do have just a couple of, and as well, also from Steve Dunbar and myself, thank you very much for the bus stop going in. I've been texting with him, and he is quite happy to hear about that. So I just wanted to mention really briefly that as this is going forward, I hope that the city staff and the developers will make sure that clear signage is placed where we have intersections with the trail, and also that the city takes this as an opportunity to work with Caltrans to improve the crossing at Isabel. This is going to be this is going to add to the number of jobs that exist in that area, the Isabel, Jack London area. And it would be very nice to make it as easy as possible for bikers and people who walk or commute to get there. So the bus stop is one great thing, the improvements to the trail are another, and just making sure that signage is clear and working with Caltrans to make the crossing as easy as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Branning. Brian Werner, Michael Bland, John Stein. Mr. Werner.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm Brian Werner, a lifelong resident of Livermore. I'm also the business rep for Alameda County Sheet Metal Workers Local 104. I'm here also representing 450 families, many who live in Livermore second and third generations. These families are members of my union, the IEBW 595, Local 483 Sprinkler Fitters, and Local 342 Plumbers and Pipe Fitters. These working families want to see their community grow in a responsible way. We don't want to turn into Dublin. We need a balance of housing and good jobs. That's one reason we are excited to be part of this project. This project will not only have local workers help build it, it will create permanent full-time jobs for Livermore. Because of our relationship with the developer, this project will also have apprentices help build it. The more projects that have our apprentices on the job, the more local youth and veterans re-entering to civilian life is afforded to them. Local construction workers getting paid family supporting wages apprentices building it while they learn in the trade, and permanent jobs available to local residents. These are the kind of projects we want in Livermore. I urge you to approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Michael Bland, John Stein. Mr. Bland.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Michael Bland. My house was on one of those homes that on that appendage there that is very close to this project, and basically I felt like I was ignored when I went to the Planning Commission with my concerns about noise. So I'm here again to try to catch your ear on that topic. The noise from the Oaks and Industrial Park before 7 a.m. is excessive. I worked with staff of the city to try to raise the consciousness about this. There have been some efforts to try to address noise coming from the Tesla facility by only opening the doors on the western side of that facility. However, as I think the other lady mentioned, the dip in the sound wall, I believe, tends to funnel noise into this development. And when those doors are opening up, it's not necessarily the trucks that are making the noise, but it sounds like those big trash bins when they get picked up and slammed to the ground when they're being emptied. That occurring at 6 a.m. and earlier is just unacceptable for a reasonable residential community, and I'm concerned that Prologis will just exacerbate this because it is so much closer than the Tesla facility. I am very pleased to hear that their operations would be from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. If you would codify that and restrict those operations, the door openings, the trailers to that time frame, I think much of this could be mitigated. I ask you to do that by following the model that you have for the construction noise of the general information from Livermore, January 1, 2017. Construction noise. The city has a noise ordinance that regulates construction noise. That work generates noise cannot begin before 7 a.m. and cannot continue after 8 p.m. What does it matter what causes the noise, whether it's construction or what's the activity going on in the facility? We should be consistent. 7 a.m. is early enough for the noise. I read peripherally the way that these noise surveys are done, and it takes 6-minute increments and averages those times. So from reading that, it sounds like, well, I can set off a firework every 6 minutes and 1 second, and that's okay because my average is low enough. I tell you, after the second firework, I'm not going to be able to get back to sleep. I probably won't even be able to go back to sleep after firework number 1 at 6 o'clock. So let's try to make some compromise here. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., I think we can support that from a noise issue. So I urge you to take that example. The other final closing thought is, I am concerned that we have created a concrete wall. Livermore used to be very concerned about visibility of the hillsides along 580. We haven't been concerned about our residents at all. We used to be able to see the Pleasanton Ridge as I used to run every morning out in that field there. Now it's concrete. Doesn't look good. I understand the compromise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bland. And John Stein.
John Stein, 1334 Cathy Court. I strongly support this project. The architecture is outstanding for a warehouse. The landscaping is quite nice. The one concern I have is the walls. Initially, I think they will be sort of a billboard for local taggers, and I appreciate the fact they have a anti-graffiti coating. But one other thing you might think about is either heavily landscaping them or picking shrubs around the base of the wall that have long thorns, pyracantha, barberry, roses. And also, I was wondering what the city plans to do on the east side of Isabel. There was supposed to be a heavily landscaped trail there. A lot of the landscaping died, and some of the rest of it was moved during the widening. Is it going to be replaced? That would help mitigate some of the noise and definitely increase the attractiveness of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Okay, that's the last of the cards. We're going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Comments or questions by the council? Councilmember Warner?
I have just a couple of questions of follow-up from what we heard in the public comment. And I'll start with the last in, first out there. The landscaping is, and I've noted in other projects where we'd want to have adequate landscaping on some of the walls. So what's the thought on the landscaping on both sides? Because that was mentioned. And then what's the reaction or with respect to the request to really codifying the noise limit hours or the operating hours?
We, the council certainly has the prerogative to recommend changes to the landscape plan for the project. If there is support for additional base landscaping along the base of the walls that are on the project site. I think Mr. Spence was getting information on the city-owned land along the east side of Isabel.
Yeah, because I was wondering, some of that land is Caltrans' responsibility, right?
It is. Some of the landscaping had to be removed for the Caltrans improvements.
And that's all been replaced.
There is no plan for additional landscaping to be replaced at this time.
No, I know that, but the responsibility, Mr. Stein brought up the point about the widening of Isabel, and that has now been finished, and they re-landscaped all along certainly from Kincannon north along Isabel, and I guess I was also wondering along the bike trail if that was what the question was.
So
because
I can provide some information on this. Caltrans only does up to that chain link fence.
Right.
And
Right.
that's done. So there's nothing else.
No, yes, I understand that, but I was trying to clarify what Mr. Stein was asking, because I thought he was bringing up with respect to the widening of Isabel, and that's been replaced. I think there's also the landscaping that's along the bike path on the east side, and I wasn't sure whether or not that was a question, because I don't know that that's been some of that's been pretty pathetic.
A lot of it was inappropriate or wasn't properly watered during the drought and died, and I was wondering if that would be replaced.
Along the bike trail or
Along the bike trail.
Okay, so that helps clarify it.
So we can take a look at that. We have had major die-off as a result of the drought. We have been going around the city to the highest profile locations first and doing replacement, but we can take a look.
Okay. So I had the second question on the noise.
Codifying the noise limit hours. So we have a PD, Plan Development Zoning, for this location, so we can identify specific hours of operation. We have additional conditions that have been incorporated into the staff report and requirements. The 10 a.m. to 7 p.m., Ben? 7 a.m. to 10 p.m.
So let me ask it this way. As we heard the request to codify the noise limits, is what you're saying that we are responsive to that request, or do we need to do more to be responsive?
We have not. So we have codified noise limits in our general plan. They are, as the speaker described, average noise levels over an extended period. So they don't very effectively deal with isolated noise events like a garbage container being crashed to the ground. If the council wanted to add additional conditions around noise, you could look at asking for specified limits not to be exceeded during certain hours, or you could curtail certain types of operations during those hours. We think we have reasonable expectations. If you wanted to go further, we could explore that with you.
So I got the impression that what we were talking about was insufficient, given the request, and I'm kind of responsive to the request. So if there's a way to make it be more responsive to that, especially with what I understood is that you drop one of these trash canisters or something, it's going to wake you up. And so it's not going to meet this average thing. So I think what I heard was restrict the operations so that there's nothing of significant noise generating before a certain time.
So
I think what you said was that when they opened and closed the doors, that it sounded like somebody dropping one of those trash containers.
Whatever the cause is, I don't want to be specific with that, but I think what I heard was a request to make sure that we didn't have significant noise pulses before a certain hour.
So I think what we'll do is your industrial zones do not generally regulate hours of operation. We allow businesses to change operations over time to respond to market conditions when they are in a properly zoned industrial area like this area is. But I think in this particular case, regulating single point maximum noise levels so that they can't be heard essentially in the adjacent neighborhood is what the that's the objective you're after. So when a door closes, a trash item shows up, any of those sort of single point, we can craft a revised standard.
Yeah, before a certain hour.
Yep. Essentially
Right, okay.
what and traditionally, many of our ordinances have that 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. essentially blackout time or restriction time. And we can also work with the applicant and see both single point noise items and those hours.
So I wanted to ask the applicant, what's your initial reaction to that request?
Or is it Arcade? Arcade's the one that's going to be in there.
Who's representing the applicant?
Can you repeat the request, please?
Mark, could you, the request was repeated, and I think you're better at phrasing it than I will
We can do that. Essentially, it would be to restrict rather than average noise levels to the levels that are included in your conditions of approval. It would be to restrict single point noise levels to a similar level. We would suggest something in the 55 decibel range for a single point, a maximum noise range between the hours of 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. That would essentially impact things like movement of heavy objects, roll-up doors, those sorts of things could theoretically trigger that if they were not managed properly during those nighttime hours.
Okay. So we have a 3-shift operation. A bulk of our operation is between the hours of 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. First shift comes in at 6:30, and they start preparing for the loads that are going out to Lamb Research. So I think we can take a look at that and work on some of those. Take a look at some of those restrictions that are coming in, and I'll talk to our Vice President of Operations to see and work with the council or with the city.
So we could be looking at a 7 a.m. start. I think some of the concerns was these noise events happening before 7 a.m.
Yes, we can take, our staff comes in at 6:30,
Right,
but they're not opening up the doors right at that
Okay.
time. It takes, they're coming in, they're getting their work orders.
Their first cup of
prepping
coffee
everything. Yeah.
and the like. Yeah, okay. So we can limit the single point noise events over 55 decibels after 7 o'clock.
Well, I
Yes.
think, yeah.
Yes, we can
Okay.
take a look at that, yeah.
Okay, very good. Work? Okay.
I think
Thank you.
it's important to remember, though, that the doors face a different direction
Right.
on this building than Tesla.
Right, but we have that dip in the sound wall.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the dip in the sound wall.
Yeah, that was one of my questions too, but
What-
if we maybe raise the sound wall a little bit.
What's
would
up
that
with the
help?
dip in the sound wall? Is that on the east side of Isabel?
Yes.
So this was put up by the housing developer? No? Who put it up?
It was for when you rerouted the creek there, it was for the spillover, it's a 100-year floodplain. That creek that had to be rerouted, so that the underpass under Stanley could happen.
Yeah, but that's way, the underpass is way south of where we're talking about.
But there's a channel that carried out a 100-year flood up to basically across where Prologis is gonna go in.
Where's the dip, though? I don't know.
Just to the south of the development that goes closest to Isabel?
It's just south of the intersection of 84 and East Jack London.
Okay. So was that put up by Caltrans then?
If you put up the map, we can show you where it is.
So essentially, it was built in relationship to the roadway rather
Right.
than the projects on the western side of Isabel Avenue.
Okay.
And it follows the contours. Essentially,
Right.
the sound wall is taller in a couple of places
Right.
based on the contours of the roadway, not
Right.
necessarily what's happening in the industrial
Got
area.
it, okay.
Okay.
So what do we do about that, if anything? Have we looked at that as a channel for noise?
I do not believe staff has done specific studying on that particular contour issue of whether that perception is actually what's essentially the path of travel for noise. You have a couple of different items here. One is obviously your single point noise concerns.
Right.
One is overall noise concerns. We have studied sort of the overall averages, and in fact, you've got testimony noting that, yep, that might be met. So I think the item to specifically address would be a 55 decibel single point noise maximum, which would actually be quite restrictive for a single point. That's on top of your 45 decibel at night average noise level. So if the council wanted to sort of be much more restrictive on those single point noises, that would, I think, be an appropriate standard as measured essentially at the eastern side of the Isabel right-of-way. So we'd have a clear place to measure that. 45 decibel average is essentially what your existing standard requires, but as testimony noted, the individual events could be much louder than that. Having a 55 decibel is actually a relatively quiet single point restriction and would be unique among your industrial providers, but I think based on the design of the building, they could actually meet that requirement because of how they've oriented both their walls, their screening walls, and their truck doors.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Monroe.
So first of all, I want to say this is the first project that's come before. This is the first time I've seen a project like this. I'm really impressed with the work that's been done, and I just wanted to thank city staff for that. I'm impressed. I'm even more impressed with the fact that with the exception of the noise issue, the comments have been universally in support of it. And even the noise issue sounds like it's something that has been is possible to work through. I'm impressed that we have community support, we have business support, we have labor support, we have development support. That's wonderful. I wanted to say to go to that noise issue because it looks to me like we have actually three issues going on. One is leftover concerns around the Tesla project, which, as far as I understand, have been largely mitigated. So that's one thing. The second is this project, and it sounds to me like this project has been designed keeping those previous issues in mind. And then the third is the issues around the sound wall or the noise that has resulted both from 84. Read it, sound wall issues. I think it would behoove us to keep those three issues separate and simply address this project at this time. I am wondering, with one exception, which is that as noise is generated from three different plants, Gillig, Tesla, and this NRK, how do you know who's generating what noise? So that would be the overlap, and then I would also suggest that we address the sound wall, the berm, in a separately.
Councilor Coomber?
I love bringing jobs to Livermore. That's a big part of it. I support Councilmember Monroe's idea of separating these issues. I still want to talk about that noise restriction during those hours. I think we can do that tonight, as well as get this off the ground. So I'm going to suggest that we take that on.
Are you talking about the noise restriction?
Imposing the noise
Tesla?
restrictions along with the with this
Are you talking about the noise restriction around Tesla or on this project?
Around this project.
On this project, okay.
Yes.
I think we've got that pretty much
You got it
knocked to the ground.
Yeah, it sounded like we did. And with that in mind, I like the idea of jobs staying local, new employment coming to Livermore. It doesn't at all override any of the noise issues in the neighborhood. I think we can attack the sound wall issues and especially the trail. As a trail user out there, yeah, it's sad to see the vegetation wither as it did. So if we can somehow take that on to the level that we're involved, I don't think LARPD is involved with that. I think that's all us. And make that trail perhaps a little bit of a noise barrier in itself. Trees are good for that. Thank you.
Oh, with that, any further discussion? Councilmember Warner.
Well, I'd like to make a motion then. Is that what you're going to ask for? Or?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask for.
Okay. And so I would move approval for this project with the additional restriction on the single point noise. And we didn't hear any reinforcement, but I'd also like to make sure we improve the landscaping in front of the wall.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Councilmember Warner, seconded by Councilmember Coomber. Any discussion on that motion?
I'd just like to suggest that I appreciate the comments we heard here tonight, and I think we heard from the developer Prologis that they're willing to continue to work on this as things develop. I mean, I think one of the challenges we all have is we don't exactly know what it's going to sound like. I admit that there's been some there's been some noises from Tesla that maybe we hadn't expected. I think Prologis and the city have worked pretty hard to address those to the best that they can at this point, but I don't think any of us really know until it gets finished and is operational what we're actually going to experience. But I think that the points brought up are good ones, and I think we'll need to be cognizant of those, and I think between staff and Prologis working forward, and if I can ask the folks that have been here tonight to if you see things or hear things, I suppose is what you're talking about, to bring them to our attention in the future, and we'll try to address them to the best we can. But I, like my colleagues, I support the project. I think it's a great project, and frankly, we're going to take some vehicles off the road. I mean, we heard some folks earlier talk about climate change and carbon footprint and so on, and I think RK is to be commended for wanting to move closer to Lamb Research. Right now, they're out on Marathon on the east side of the city. They're going to move much closer to Lamb, and it's going to be a much shorter commute and lowering their carbon footprint. So I think all those things, I think this has been a great project, and I appreciate the union members being here today, recognizing the jobs, and appreciate the fact that they live in the community and are willing to support us. So I'm very enthusiastic about this project.
And there were elements specifically in here addressing carbon footprint.
Yeah.
So because that's become part of just the way we do business now.
And Honorable Mayor, we wanted to clarify, your staff is here desperately writing things down to make sure we're capturing your motion so it gets
That's
done.
why I
the way
talked as long as I did.
we appreciated that a bunch. And so to clarify, we are incorporating the single point maximum noise at the residential property lines. We are adding essentially landscaping in front of, at the base of the wall on the project site. And then we heard the third concept there, which was additional landscaping surrounding the trail. And you're adding that as a project condition as well. Is that correct?
No.
I don't think that's...
No, I don't.
Okay. So the first two are correct. The third one is not correct.
Right.
Very good.
That would be my point.
Right. And I thought Councilmember Monroe's suggestion, let's parse this thing into the project and the other stuff.
Fair enough. That's why we checked.
Okay, any motion second? Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you for all your comments. Luna, thank you for coming out here tonight. Appreciate your time. And as it was said, we're bringing jobs to Livermore. And we've already got the housing in place, so we're creating the jobs housing balance here. So thank you very much, one and all. We have no matters for consideration.
And one more item, that Honorable Mayor, sorry to interrupt. We would want to clarify at the staff level, while we believe we've made significant progress on Tesla, we would still consider that a work in progress. And we will continue to monitor that, especially as the weather warms and people become more sensitive to late night noises. So we will continue to work with the property owner moving forward on that.
Great. Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that additional clarification. Okay, with that, we have no matters for consideration. Moving on to matters initiated and committee member reports. Councilmember Coombs.
I was very disappointed to have to miss my PAPCO meeting today because Oakland was tied up with striking teachers all downtown, and they blocked off several streets and made parking within 6 blocks unreal. So I was there from 12:45 to whatever, and I will get some minutes and report on that as soon as I hear from them. Other than that, I have a LAFTA finance meeting tomorrow, but nothing in the interim.
Okay, Councilmember Monroe.
So I attended my first EBCE meeting and was sworn in as a director representing Livermore, and am coming up to speed on what EBCE is doing. One thing it's doing is tomorrow, and I will unfortunately be missing this, will be paying off its loan to Alameda County to the tune of, I think, $3.5 to $4 million. So it seems to be coming along as energy provider. Vice Mayor Coomber and I met with the subcommittee met with staff. We're getting ready for a city input and education meeting on March 14th. It'll take place here from 7 to 9, and the topic will be basic needs and cleanup. With regard to that, I've been noticing chatter on social media sites about an upcoming cleanup on March 18th at the creek, and I was wondering if we could get clarification about what was taking place and why, so that we could have that on the public record as opposed to on social media.
Absolutely. In response, Councilmember Monroe, I'm going to have Chief Harris come forward because his staff are going to be most directly involved in that. But the creek cleanup is something we're coordinating throughout the system. And so some of the areas there ultimately do have impacts where people are living in close proximity to the creeks. And I think that's what's generated the questions and or comments on social media.
We should clarify which creek.
Yes.
Sure. Good evening. Michael Harris, your police chief, and thank you for asking the question, giving me a chance to answer. One way to explain it is what it's not. What we're not doing is we're not doing a homeless sweep. We're not doing a raid. We're not doing anything aggressive that way. What we're doing is assisting some private property owners who recognize that the creek we're talking about here is the Arroyo between North Livermore and Las Colinas, I thought. Yeah. For those of you who don't recognize that description, it's the Home Depot, Walmart parking lot in that area there. It is owned by private property, and they've recognized the need to clean the creek. There's significant garbage and debris building up, and have asked us to notify folks that are living in that area that cleanup will be occurring on March 18th, as you suggested. So what we're doing is getting out in front of that, and we have, as you know, the homeless policing and liaison team that is very familiar with many of the people that are living in that area, and have begun letting them know that this is something that has to be done. And so it's going to take 3 or 4 days to get the entire thing clean. And so we're working with them to try and find alternate locations for them to be, and working with service providers to meet with them ahead of time. And we don't expect this to be any kind of an issue where we have to make arrests or anything like that. We want it to go smooth and get our
our environment taken care of down there.
Thank you
Is this-
very much.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm not quite done. Okay. I've also I met with the East Bay representative of the League of California Cities, to Samantha Cahill, to find out how I could be involved. I have been appointed to the Community Services Committee, so I will be representing the East Bay League of California Cities in looking at community services. And with that, I will be meeting with some members of League of California Cities, with Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Cahan this Friday. I do have two questions, I guess matters initiated, and still getting the lingo. I'm curious to know what the cost to the city for opting up to Renewable 100 would be if we took that on. I'm assuming you don't have that on top of at your fingertips.
Strangely enough, no. But we could certainly provide that back to the council in a memo if that's that ought to be. Although not as easy as you might imagine, we have a whole bunch of accounts that the city draws power on. We could actually give you a fairly good estimate relatively soon on that, and we'll get a memo back to the council on that.
And I'm also curious to know. I think I have some of the information, but I'd like to have. What would our relationship be with EBCE in terms of helping to provide information to our residents? Is there?
So perhaps the most straightforward way to do that is to make it easier for people to get in touch with EBCE directly, and we could certainly do that with some information on our website. I would be hesitant for the city to engage in sort of a separate and parallel process, just because we could be just slightly at odds with each other, and it would be like us explaining any of our service providers, functions. If we were to take on what Cal Water does, generally we want to get them to the right person in the right slot in one bounce. And so that, I think, would be your staff's recommendation, would be to have us provide information that gets people to the right place at EBRC.
Okay. And then continuing with the many comments on climate change, one of the things we did at the goals and values was to look at having climate change was brought up as one of the goals and values. We talked about incorporating it into. I suggested, and maybe it can happen, maybe it can't. Incorporating that into, rather than having it as a goal of value, incorporating it into the goals and values. I noticed that as part of Mr. Rainey's comment, the letter that he submitted, he had some suggestions with that. Is it possible to take a look at that? Is that something that we could do to see which of those things are reasonable?
We could actually provide the council some more information on sort of both policy and informational options on that. In process, you do have a response. There was a previous request about the Energy and Environment Committee. We're essentially noting that memo should be coming back to you fairly shortly. We can also provide you some additional information about the best way to integrate, because I think there were a couple of great ideas, which is an update to our climate action plan. That, to me in particular, seems like it ought to be coordinated with our general plan update, which essentially is just about to kick off in another 18 months or so. We'll be ready for that process. And that's a really great opportunity to not only update the policies, but to integrate them more completely into our general plan as we sort of redraw that document from the ground up. That's a very foundational document for us on overall development policy, so we can provide additional information back to the council on sort of what our options are and how we might go about doing both of those things.
Okay. And finally,
did I get the proper, everybody on board with that? Very good.
Finally, and I'm not sure if this is overstepping, Jason, tell me if I'm, I noticed that once again, we've had public comment and then people leave, and there's no way for them to get our response to their public comment. And I'm wondering if there's any way that we can do something about that in terms of the moving things around. So I don't know if this is the place to say something about that, but I'm saying it, so tell me if I'm wrong. So, yes, no?
Wait, run that past again.
I would like to see a way for us to respond to public comment while people are still here, as opposed to, I mean, we had a full house. We no longer do, and many of the people who spoke don't know how we responded, and I think that's unfortunate. I would like us to.
However, they can go to TV 30 and pull up on demand, and it's all cataloged, and they go right to matters initiated and find out our response.
I understand they can do that. I understand they can. I'm wondering if we can be more responsive.
But I don't know that we can start having a conversation, right, on matters initiated, or can we start? Do we start talking about this?
So that would be one of the concerns we'd have to address. If you were to put your items right there next to it, and you engaged in conversation similar to what happened today with the applicant before you, you would not be consistent with the Brown Act. So you could, if you respond briefly to somebody's comment that they make at the lectern, that's consistent with the Brown Act. Matters initiated are what you've done after you've had a response to see whether there's additional work. But if you put those too close in time, there's an opportunity. You have that opportunity to do that. But you also need to be mindful that you cannot engage in a dialogue. You can't debate it, and you can't discuss it, though.
So what would I have to do to see if I get 3 nods to have this be look at a way to make that happen?
So there's 2 different opportunities. You've already passed one earlier this year. On January 7th, we brought before you rules of procedure, which order your agenda, which you have before you this evening. That will be returning to you at your first meeting in April. If you'd like to change that or reorder that would be the appropriate time to bring that up.
Okay. Thank you.
And just a side note on that is, as Jason said, there's actually 2 steps. In other words, it is okay for a council member to say something like, I've heard you. That sounds like maybe a matter that I would bring up later in the meeting. And then that gives also a little bit of time, because of course on the matters, the one question that you sometimes have is this a huge project or a very small one? And there's a staff response there. Without getting into the merits of the project, we can give you a sense of additional information is a fairly straightforward thing. A change in policy takes a lot more work. That at least gives a signal back to people in a very short sentence to, that's something I'm going to consider bringing up. And that at least signals to them, if I really want to know, I can go home and watch on TV. I can look it up elsewhere. Or I can check back with my decision maker later. Any of those are great options rather than, because I know some people feel like, gosh, I wonder if they did anything. And that at least answers that question without engaging in a debate.
And for example, no, we're too much discussion. Okay. Councilmember Warner.
Nothing to report in terms of activities, but a couple of things I wanted to follow up on matters initiated is just on the last comment on the updating the climate action plan and everything else. Would like to be sure that your comments are cognizant of the costs and that we acknowledge all things are good, but some are diminishing marginal rate of return. And so, for instance, would want to point out that the city is already very climate conscious, and that was taken care of or incorporated in the new building that's being built. But there were decisions were made at the margin. So I just want to make sure that when you come back with your suggestions and there were analysis, that you make that a key component of the discussion. The other thing I wanted to mention is that we all participated in the Planning Commission interviews, and we had an exceptional pool of candidates, and in some ways we wish we had more spots than we had candidates. So, but I would want to point out, and Mr. Stein mentioned it again tonight, that that we may need to rethink how or revise how we're using the Planning Commission, and that I really resonated with me the thought that the Planning Commission really ought to be doing more planning for the future rather than what the focus now is more reactive on as projects are submitted. So under matters initiated, I think Councilmember Coomer was, and we had that discussion, is that we'd like to ask you to come back with some thoughts as to how we can get more citizen input into thinking about revising a number of the plans that have been in place for a fair number of years, and in particular the downtown, the South Valley, and North Livermore, among those things. So I thought there were very good points that Mr. Stein brought up, and that we ought to think about how we can get more citizen involvement. And then the last thing I'd want to, so did I get 3 nods on that, I think, right?
And so the response, just to be clear, would be a memo back to you with information on how we might approach those sorts of things.
Well, I think both how and when, because you guys have got a lot on your plate. But I do think it's very important to get more input on those things. So then the last thing is, I just heard that Senator Glazer had introduced SB 767 regarding the Alameda Tesla expansion area. And that's a bill that's similar to what was introduced last year, and the council put a letter of support.
We have a letter on the way.
Pardon?
We have a letter on the way.
Okay, good, done.
Since that's consistent with our previous action.
Right.
I'm not sure everybody heard that, but the letter is on the way.
Vice Mayor Carling?
Yes, thank you. On the 14th, I had a Stop Waste meeting over in Oakland. Teachers weren't on strike at that point, so I guess I got there and back without incident. But I will say that they have a website that I wasn't aware of that I think the public might be interested in. That's called recycleware.org, and it's an interesting website because if you have a couch you want to get rid of, you can type in couch, and it will tell you what you might be able to do with it. So it's pretty interesting for odd things that you want to get rid of that won't fit into one of your bins that are picked up by LSI. I participated, like with my colleagues, in the goals and priorities on the 19th, the Planning Commission interviews, as Councilmember Werner mentioned, and then with Councilmember Monroe on the 22nd, the homeless meeting. Around matters, I was interested in a couple of things people have brought up here. Ms. Nielsen brought up this sidewalk in front of the post office. I don't know what's going on with that crosswalk there, but is there an opportunity to look at that and see if there's needs for improvement? I mean, I know I'm very well aware of the crosswalk there, but I'm not sure I understand the issues. But that's something we could look at?
Yes, if the council would like, we could provide a memo back and take a look at the crosswalk and see if any improvements are needed.
Okay.
And I would add, look at both crosswalks, because quite honestly, people turning right from Livermore Avenue on to Second is really dangerous sometimes and fast.
So it's the one right in front of the post office and the one just on the north side, I guess, right? Across 2nd Street. If you're going to Pete's from the post office. Yeah, okay.
We're
No,
just
not at this
staying
point.
local up here. We've already been through public comments, so we're discussing it here. But we're going to be addressing the crosswalk.
Then the only other thing that I would say, and I think Nikki No brought this up, is their PG&E bill. We were just looking at ours today, and I can't figure it out either. So anyway, that's just an aside. Unless somebody in the city can, maybe I should talk to my council member here. I'm finished. Thank you.
Good. Anything else? Done? Okay.
I'm finished. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Okay, on the 13th February, I was at the Valley Link meeting where we talked about the operations, the hybrid. We were talking about the connection from River Islands, ultimately to the BART station in Dublin Pleasanton, a diesel-electric hybrid. We also had a significant discussion about funding sources, where the funds might be coming from. There's as many of you know, we have almost $600 million from Alameda County, from Measure BB and RM3 and RM2 bridge toll money. So there's no money yet from San Joaquin County. There's significant interest in pursuing SB1 funds, but I think they'll also need to have some local funding as well. On the same evening, there was at the Alameda County Mayor's Conference, we had a presentation on opioid addiction and the impacts to local cities on that. And that'll be more information following on that. On the 15th, Esteline Wilson, proving that light bulbs and ladies last longer in Livermore, turned 100 years old. So that was some of the fun stuff. On the 20th, Granada High School had the groundbreaking for their athletic complex. That's going to be quite spectacular. That same evening was the LAVMA board, the Livermore Amador Valley Water Management Authority. We had an operations report, and one of the cool things is after an excruciating effort, we finally got some new pumps, and the efficiencies have increased from 50% efficiency to 70% efficiency on the pumps, so that's good. And then on the 23rd, Shadow Puppet, one of our local breweries, had their first responder recognition day. It was the third annual celebration of our first responders, military, police, and fire. And literally, there were like over 1,000 people were at that. It was quite an event, but showing the tremendous support that we have in this community for our first responders. So with that, we'll adjourn, and thank you very much.